Welcome to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa. Sponsored by Carnation. Airing live on United Public Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. This show's opening has been produced, edited, narrated by Gwen Luckett at gluckett.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night's segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM and 107.7 FM from New Orleans. We're also live on Roku, so you can watch us live streaming from your TV. We're fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. You have to do a few things in order to participate. Go into chat, our YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio. You can go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, Podbeam, and of course, our group Horsefly Chronicles Radio. And if you have any questions for our guest, please ask. Tonight, guys, we have an amazing guest. Please welcome to the show, Demonologist, psychic medium, paranormal investigator, author, and TV personality Sean Austin. He was featured on the series Demon Files, where he really discovered his natural psychic and mediumship abilities and was taught how to approach cases of the demonic. He's the author of 2 books, along with David Weatherly, Shadow Chaser and Shadow Chaser, The In-Between. He's the lead investigator on Travel Channel's now Discovery Plus Ghost Loop TV series, and most recent, Netflix's 28 Days Haunted, which is based off Ed and Lorraine Warren's methods of investigating the paranormal. So please, let's welcome him to the show. Yay.
Welcome.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you? It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's crazy how time flies, right?
Thank you for coming on tonight. So, just in case anyone out there does not know you, why don't you take us to like the beginning of your story? I know that you've had a lot of paranormal experience as a child.
Obviously, before I got into the paranormal, I was, an avid musician and writing music and being a singer, and it kind of like hit me like a meteor out of the sky, out of nowhere. Trying to prove to a friend that ghosts were real, took him to a local cemetery that had a lore of 3 women in white that would chase you out. And as in that process, instead of him becoming a believer, I had my first real experience, even though I did believe in it. And that experience of this little girl's spirit that followed me home, which 2 or 3 weeks later, I saw a shot of a little girl, got my first EVP. It just kind of was my trigger into the whole supernatural realm. And here I am over 13 years later doing backstrokes in it 24/7. It's taken me in a whole new direction in life ever since.
Wow. I mean, yeah, you're really busy. How did you learn how to approach like the demonic cases the way that you do?
When I first started investigating the paranormal, I started to have like dark experiences. And I think one of the cases that I went to a place and I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I felt some spirits were trapped in a property, and I didn't know, but I was trying to help the spirits, and I kind of like threw some holy water on the side of the property because I was getting EVPs associated with the property, like from the outside of the property without going on someone else's property. And I wanted to help them. And ever since then, I would start to have these crazy experiences, and that drew a lot of dark, creepy, evil type stuff. But little did I know that really was some sort of religious provocation. I think because of that, it brought a lot into, me, and became interested into the demonic and reading books about it. And then I had my own podcast myself, which led me to meet Ralph Sarchi, who is my mentor in demonology. And then I published my first book and my second book. And it's kind of just taken me along into this calling of dealing with this sort of thing ever since. And that's really what they say is being a demonologist is a calling. It's not just like I just decided I want to be this tomorrow. It's the universe kind of works and opens these pathways towards you and draws you in, and even cases, these types of cases. So it's been kind of like that ever since.
I agree with that totally. It does. It draws you in. I mean, we're living proof of that. I mean, right?
Yeah.
How do you become a demonologist?
Well, I mean, it's just like, I took it from my mentor. I mean, when he said, you're Sean, you're a demonologist, I'm like, I don't even know how I deserve that title, really. Having that relationship with Ralph for 6-7 years and going on cases with him, and the way I approach these cases, the way he taught me to do it. So someone of Ralph's stature telling me I'm a demonologist, I was a little uncomfortable with it. But obviously, I guess it's the approach of it and this studying of how these things activate and manifest and project themselves and how they attack people and the types of things that go on that are specific to the characteristics of their haunting rather than just a human spirit. But it's like I said, it's kind of been a thing that people were saying to me in the beginning when I first started jumping on a couple of podcasts. They were like, you have a calling. Even before I met Ralph or did this stuff, it was just like, it seems like people were kind of picking up on that ever since when I started.
What can a demonologist do?
Well, obviously, a demonologist can take care of a specific type of haunting rather than just a normal human spirit. I'm allowed to do an exorcism ritual on a house, which would take care of a demonic infestation of a location. I can't do an exorcism on a person, which would be a solemn exorcism on an individual. Obviously, would have to be a priest. But being able to take care of that specific type of haunting, if you have scratching on the wall, you guys know the drill. So scratching on the walls, foul smells, don't have rational explanation. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play that would kind of stick out a little bit more than the norm of just human spirits playing games within a location.
A lot of people ask, well, if you can remove a demon, then where does the demon go and what prevents it from coming back to that property?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of factors at play, and that's why we really don't charge for things of that nature when we come in to try to help people, is because it's really the lifestyle of the person. They can invite it in at any given moment. So it's like we could come in there and turn a house into a church, but if they don't have the lifestyle that would keep it displaced, because obviously we can't destroy this energy, we displace it somewhere else, and they're always going to look for a crack in your aura to come back and return. And they have no conception of time, so they kind of know opportunities in the future where you may actually be in that bracket of opportunity for them to kind of reach back and get back in. So it depends on the individuals and the way that they live their lifestyle after the fact, because there's a lot of things that these things have an advantage over us from the shadows tactically, what they're trying to figure out and try to victimize us and not lose the permission they initially had when the invitation was originally opened.
I agree with you on that. Definitely.
I have a question. What if you have this perfect family? Okay, just say, hypothetically speaking, I mean, they really honestly have nothing wrong, no baggage, no nothing, and they have a terrible haunting, demonic, something bad. Like, what do you say about that? Like, attachment.
Well, I mean, again, there's so many diversified scenarios that can take place and why something like of that specific nature would be going on. Now, did they move into a home where there was an invitation already open? Because, even though they didn't involve themselves with any of this stuff, there's got to be something that's creating this manifestation or the paranormal environment. So say, for instance, there was a cult activity in the house, someone else moves in and they have to deal with the repercussions of the invitation that was prior there. So then, obviously I would take it on from that sort of thing. And if they truly need help, then they'll, do anything, whatever it takes to make sure that they can displace it and it's not affecting them and the people that they care about. I mean, your home is supposed to be your sanctuary, and they should be feeling at peace and look forward to going home and not feeling like, you're walking around in quicksand dealing with oppressive creatures from other dimensions trying to mess with you and ruin your lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that.
You said a perfect family, and then I look at a family that's atheist. They don't believe in God or the devil. They just live their life, and they're a good quality family, and they move into a home. They're affected by negative entities, but they don't know because they don't believe it. Have you ever dealt with a scenario like that?
Yeah, there's people that are not open to this stuff, but then the fact is, I try to explain is like, look, if you're having these unexplained events and you're opening yourself up to the belief of some sort of spiritual experience, then if you believe in spirits, then you have to believe in some sort of higher power. And I try to gear them. It's like, look, I can come in here and try to help you, but the advantage these things have is because we can't fight these things with our physical muscles. This is not a physical fight we're talking about. It's a spiritual fight, and in your spiritual muscles is your faith. And that's how these things, again, have an advantage, because subconsciously they know the doubt that you have, and how you're going to be able to take care of these things. And that doubt within you subconsciously, again, is just how they can tactically manipulate the situation to their advantage. So I would try to gear them to saying it's good to be open to discovering some spirituality with these experiences, because if you're asking for help and you're obviously believing in some sort of unexplained events that's taking place, and that should lead you, maybe, hopefully, idealistically, into some sort of spirituality to help you protect yourself after I leave, because again, if they have invitation to be there, even if they don't believe, if they only believe in the Easter Bunny, it don't freaking matter. I mean, they're going to do what they're capable of doing if they have permission to do so.
If they have permission to do so. It's interesting. I always go back to the Amityville horror case. It's one of the most fascinating cases that ever existed. And okay, so we all know what happened with family one, and then the second family moves in. But then after that, there was a few families that nothing's here. There is nothing. It's all make believe, which we know it's not. And then and then another family might come and say, no, it is real. So is the property tainted? And the entities look for the perfect family as victims, and then other families are just not affected because there's no initial belief, there's no thought to it to believe or understand that these bad things are happening, if any. What do you think about that? I find that so fascinating. Different families are affected in the most haunted location, and others, they say, no, it's not real.
Well, the Amityville, I agree, is probably one of the most fascinating cases in paranormal history. And I even have personal stakes and experiences having to do with that case. I don't know if you know. I mean, I did a documentary about my personal experiences having to do with that house, a whole story that I wrote about in my second book. And then a year ago, we did a documentary. And, I was never even in the house. I was by the house and by the DeFeo Graves house. And the amount of stuff that took place and followed me around, proved to me how real that stuff is, really is, compared to whatever people like to say, because it's such a oversaturated, in the news and out there in the public about a haunted house. People say it's a hoax, it's a claim. Yeah, I mean, we all know when there's like movies and Hollywood get involved, there's always going to be some sort of level of exaggeration. But I truly believe 100% that they were experiencing some real stuff in there, because the cases that I've experienced throughout the years are the ones that really stick to you like ooze. And it's really fascinating at the same time, because they really hold on to you and they stick around you. You notice it. And I had so much of that happening when it has to do with that case. Now, in my opinion, is that the Amityville house is that the Lutz family moved into there. Number one is that they kept all of the original furniture that the DeFeo family had, including the bedpost they were murdered on. So we all know that, inanimate objects retain some sort of energy. Now talk about those bedposts and what happened to them. That was all retaining all that stuff that was going on there. Now, not just the murder, but think about all the other things that we heard about going on there, the physical abuse, the drinking, the drugs. There's talks about the mob and things that went on in the basement to, burying bodies. Like, obviously some of this is all speculative. I mean, we even heard about a story where the Warrens said that, there was a house that was actually on that property that had an exorcism done, and they moved the house. And then why did they start putting religious, statues all over the place in the house? And I think that at one point Ron DeFeo admitted that they were hearing footsteps and knocking around leading up to that infamous night. So I think it was a perfect storm with the Lutz family. And also he had a very big fascination, from what we all understand, is that he was looking into telekinesis, and he was very big into the occult. So again, number one, yes, they draw certain individuals. I believe they can see it around your aura, and they try to manipulate like a chess game to make sure we know. I mean, people look at houses and I don't know what it is, but I just love this place. And they end up, moving in there, and they want the opportunity to manifest and project outwards and create scenarios that's going to represent what they are. And obviously evil and really took its hold of that family. And now the family afterwards, it's kind of funny because obviously I dig deeper into that stuff. And now one of the families, I forget which one, but one of the sons of the families that moved in after the Lutz family died of a drug overdose. And he was actually, his room was where Ron DeFeo Jr. was. He didn't die in the house, but, something else to take into account. Now there's talks about one of the families being involved in satanic stuff as well. Now, because of the documentary that I did, I don't know if you guys know, but back in 2010, when the house was up for sale, you don't see much about it. You have to kind of look for it. But there was actually one of the realtors was in the house showing the house, and they felt a chill and pressure on their chest in the basement and up on the second floor, and they ran out of there. Now, in my opinion, in which we discuss in the documentary, is like, all right, well, if this guy was making it up for attention, don't you think he'd be on every major news network everywhere? I mean, this was so like hush and so low energy that, like, when I see this article about this, like, I really brought validity to it, and because of also what I experienced. Another quick little story is that when I was actually working on the story in my second book about this whole thing that happened to me, this guy contacted me and actually told me, I was really obsessed with the case for 15 years. And I have so much information about it, this and that. And he told me this really interesting story. Now, mind you, I can't prove this story, but again, I thought it was very interesting. And again, because what I was experiencing and what was happening to me around me, waking up at 3:50 in the morning, constantly having dreams about the house and seeing a black mist go through my ceiling. Like, it was just constantly around me. It was really, really weird. He told me that he met some guy online who actually bought the actual negatives of the crime scene at the DeFeo family. And now when he took the photos back home, he said that this guy who bought the negatives started having demonic activity, waking up at 3:15 in the morning and stuff like that. So then this guy is talking to him online. So then this guy decides to give some digital copies to the guy I'm talking to. And then he started to have activity in his house and weird things. And he got freaked out, stopped talking to the guy. And a year later, he tried to look for this guy again and found out the guy hung himself. Oh. So, you hear about these little things, and I was just like, I know. It's just like, that this stuff and cases like that, there's something to that case. I've experienced it myself. And like, when these things were coming to me, I actually have even, in the documentary, I mean, one time I was, filming a live feed, and I intuitively speaking, I felt like George Lutz was with me. I'm like, George, you here? And I have it on video, and you hear Lutz. And I'm like, why are you following me? It said the chapter. Now, at the time, I was getting ready to write my second book, including that story in the coming months, because I think I was filming Ghost Loop at the time. I was doing like a haunted hotel in between filming. And all of a sudden, you hear this voice come through, and it says, Amityville stole my soul. And now, I'm a musician, and my ears are pretty keen. And I'm just like, that sounded like George Lutz's voice. And I took a real interview from George Lutz, and I compared it to the voice that came through the spirit box, and it is identical. And I actually had one of his personal friends that knew him in life, who watched the documentary, who was on her phone in between watching the documentary, and absolutely dropped it on the floor when she heard that voice come through the box. She said, that is his voice, unbelievably. So yeah, there's a lot of weird things that happen with that case. And I love to be in that house just to see.
I would love to buy that house. That house is absolutely gorgeous. But is it George Lutz, or is it a mimic?
Of course, you could say it is a mimic, but I don't know. I also had a voice that came through the spirit box another time, which is in the documentary too, of a voice said, I'm in prison. And I knew that was Ron DeFeo Jr.'s voice. Now, he was alive, still in prison at the time. Now, that for sure I know is a mimic, because he's not passed away. So I knew that was some sort of mimic for that. But George Lutz was passed away. And I don't know. I'm in prison's kind of like a mocking statement. But saying Amityville stole my soul is kind of like telling, like, I did something bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like an admittance to something. I did something wrong and I'm paying for it now. And that to me didn't really feel like it was a mocking thing. That's still speculative, but again, interesting and fascinating at the same time.
Oh, definitely. The Lutz was the second family, right?
Yes.
Yes. And they moved in 13 months after the DeFeo family. Now that was something that I discovered too when there's something having to do with the number 13 with this case too. And that's a very profound number too in the occult. But when I was reading, I realized that all these things, November 13th, 1975, 1 + 9 + 7 - 5 is 13. It was 13 months they moved in after the DeFeo family. The DeFeo family's buried in section 13. There's like 5 or 6 things. 112 Ocean Avenue is the first, the address that it originally was. 1 + 12 was 13. You know what? That was actually pretty interesting that I made a video about a couple months ago too, is the similarities of the Idaho murders in the Amityville, is because all those kids were murdered while they were sleeping at the same exact date the DeFeo family was killed, in between the same time, between 3 and 4 a.m., all while they're sleeping. No one heard anything. And somehow this guy was able to kill. And the address of the house was 1120. It's like there was some sort of synchronicity between that thing. But then I found out too that this killer's professor wrote a book, and one of her books was about the Amityville murders, which I thought was really creepy, eerie, and interesting too.
Yeah,
Wow.
There's too many coincidences there.
Yeah. And we know there's no coincidence with this stuff. And then the demonic and evil, there's symbolic synchronicities all on display. If you discover them, they're everywhere. And you know, these things like to do synchronized things as to show hidden symbols of their work.
Yes.
They like to show off. They have egos. And it is a beautiful home. I mean, I've seen recent pictures. It's just gorgeous. And I could attest to your what you say, because in the 80s, the early 80s, when that house was abandoned, friends and we all went. We packed in my big brown caddy. It was like 10 of us, and we went to that house. And we were taking pictures with the old camera back in the day. And when the film was developed, the girl that we knew says, "There's a problem." We didn't take it serious because we were teenagers, you know. This was like a week or two later. She goes, "The house is in the picture. You guys are." And she took 24 pictures, and we weren't in the pictures. I'll never forget that. I get the chills when I hear about that. And that house is real. There's just certain things you can't explain. And, I think it's one of the most fascinating cases out there. And I say that because if we look back even at that case, you shoot off a shotgun. If anyone knows what a shotgun sounds like, you could hear a shotgun a long distance away. And the fact that no one heard it, it rings like bells of why not, because the entity.
What's interesting is that
yeah.
I went back to the house with Ralph and I, because I told him what had happened. So what had happened was, when I initially went by the house and the grave, is that I went there by myself. I did a live stream, and all of a sudden at the grave of the DeFeo family is that this little kid starts coming through. And I asked initially when I got to the grave, I'm like, "Who's still here from the family?" It said John. So I go to my car because I'm in Long Island. People are walking around. I want to disturb them, visiting their loved ones. And I put the spirit box in the car, and this kid just keeps coming through over and over and over again, saying, "Help, this and that. It's me, John," or whatever the hell. And I'm like, as I always do, is what I do is I offer to pray for, the spirit. Now I know, because it's a kid, you think it'd mimic, the kid and some sort of mockery. But when I asked him, "Do you want me to pray for you?" and he said, "Please." And in my opinion, Ralph's opinion, other people's opinions, like, no demon would ever ask you to pray for any reason.
Yeah. They
would never want to bring you closer to God. So when I prayed for that kid, I prayed for him there. And then I went by the house, and then the kids kept on coming through. And, then I was the first time I heard the word George come through, and it sounded like George Less's voice. But after that initial praying for that kid, and I went home that time, is when it started. And the first thing that happened to me is I had this very vivid vision that I was walking inside the Amityville house, and I looked up in the second floor, and there's these 3 distinct shadow figures that were standing up at the top of the stairs. And I yelled out to them, and I'm like, "If that boy John DeFeo is still stuck here. I command you in the name and authority of Jesus Christ of Nazareth to let him go. And now in this adjacent room, this piano picks up and throws at me, and I feel the jolt. I wake up, chills, and I see this black mist go through my ceiling. And I'm like, what just happened? And I look at the time, it was 3:50 in the morning. That was the beginning of these creepy visions, waking up at 3:50 in the morning and see this black mist go through my ceiling. And they were pissed. They were pissed that I prayed for that kid. And I now, after everything that's happened, like I really truly believe that that boy was still stuck there in the house until what happened. And I brought Ralph back there to prove to him what had happened. And we sat there in the car, and I'll never forget that we used the device in the car. And, Ralph had asked, John, was that you in that famous picture where the Warrens took, peeking out from behind the wall? And, this kid's voice, clear as undeniably clear as day, says that wasn't me, referring to that. And obviously, we'd sit there. Is that a demonic mocking that stuff? And Ralph even asked while we were in the car, and this is in the documentary. It's called Amityville: The Resurgence, by the way, if you want to check it out, scarenetwork.tv.
Awesome.
So he asked, can you mimic the gunshot that happened that night? And it just went boom. And I had the device hooked up through the speakers. It mimicked a gunshot. It was really freaking crazy. Now, after all that had happened, I didn't realize that we were going to do a documentary. So I had to take that footage from like 4 years ago or something like that. So I went back with Billy, and I'm like, all right, let's go back there since we're going to do a documentary. Maybe let's do some more spirit box stuff. Let's try to get some validation, because what had happened is that Ralph believed me that night that boy was stuck, and he gave up his mass and his communion for that kid, and he never came through again. Never came through. So we went back there in the car, and I had this footage, and I had the infrared camera, and we are looking at the house, and you see this ball of light just circling around the front of the car, and it comes through the glass. It comes through the glass and starts flying around in front of me in the camera, and I'm like, what the hell? And it shuts off my camera. And It was just unbelievable, because I don't even know anybody who has some sort of potential visual paranormal evidence as we're standing right in front of the Amityville house. And I'm like, it's just like, there's no way that you could debunk this, because it was like December, it was freezing out, it was 37 degrees, and no bug can go right through glass. I mean, you literally see it. It came right through from outside, through the windshield into the car, and then shut my camera off. Now, we had the spirit box on and with Billy, and then it was defining everything that happened. It was referencing the 3 shadow figures, and it said, I pissed them off praying for the kid, and that John's crossed over now. It validated everything. And just to give a little context too, it's interesting because I had a vision years before this happened, and years before I got and went to the house initially. It was like the first year or two I investigated the paranormal. I had this very distinct, again, vision where I was in the car with Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed was in the front seat. Lorraine was next to me with a plaid skirt, looked like it was the 70s. And he's just like, we're off to the Amityville house. And I'm just like, okay. So then all of a sudden we pull up to the Amityville house and we walk in. Now there I am standing in that same scene where I'd be looking up at the stairs and seeing those shadow figures years later in the vision. But he puts his hand on my shoulder and says, Sean, we're back in time right now. I'm like, okay. He's like, you were a big part of all this. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, take a look up. And the word accolade was floating in midair as I looked up in like to the second floor. And then I woke up. Now, I had told Ralph and other people this story, and they're just like, I don't know, you got to be careful with dreams, because I'm like, how could I be big part of the Amityville story? Now, looking back to everything that transpired and how it unfolded, I believe that Ed Warren's spirit was telling me that because of me going there initially and what had happened, that boy John DeFeo's spirit ended up crossing over because of it.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What do you think about the family that lives there now? Are they in trouble or?
So, well, one thing just to mention too really quickly is that Billy and I went and did a screening of the Amityville documentary that we did down in the town of Amityville at a metaphysical shop where one of the ladies is in the documentary. She asked us to come down. We did a whole thing in front of 50 people. Now, within 24 hours, all of us had something weird happen. Billy heard his wife call out his name, and it wasn't her. She was sleeping. The store owner heard her kids call out to her. Her kids were nowhere near her. And then I had something weird happen to me. Like we were in the car, we were driving down to the screening, and all of a sudden Billy gets a strange number texting him 3:15 out of nowhere. And we're like, are you kidding me? And I look at my car and it said 315 miles left to the gallon. And I'm just like, and then I heard a fly buzzing in my left ear, and I thought it was literally in the car with me, and I literally flinched. I'm like, it was so bizarre. But anyways, yeah. And another thing just to add too is that there was a documentary that came out about the Amityville story recent. I think it was on Tubi, which I didn't ever know, but they had said that John DeFeo was the boy was the last person to die out of all the family. So he lived the longest from his wounds out of everybody. So to me, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, that even gives more potential validation, is that the other families may have crossed or something, and he may have came and died last, and he may have been stuck in that house ever since it happened, being lost because of it, because of his wounds. So I thought that was interesting. Nonetheless, I know you were getting back to what you were saying about the people that live there. So in the audience, the people that were watching the screening with us, there's kids with their parents who are friends with the owners of the house, and the kids have slept over there, and some of them have claimed they have seen spirits in the house.
Wow.
Definitely. I believe it.
You have to be brave to live there. I have to say, whether you're a believer or not, you have to be brave to live in that home. Just thinking about, just take paranormal out of the equation, the murders in the rooms, right? I mean, just that alone. And it is a beautiful home, but when you think of that alone, and then you add on the paranormal, I don't know. As much as I'd love to have that house, I don't know if I could actually live in that house.
I never want to live there, but I'd love to be locked in there for like 24 hours. I mean, now that I have personal involvement with it, I just, it's such a fascinating, interesting case. I would love to know, because like I said, I never even went in the house, and look at the stuff that came with me and followed me around without even going inside there. I could only imagine what potentially would happen to me if I was, in that place inside there.
I really don't think it'd be safe for you, to be honest. I don't.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I remember one time, one of my visions I had, it was like I was slowly walking up the stairs to the second floor, and I could see the paintings of the family as I was going up, and then I just woke up with this feeling like this thing wanted to make me feel like I was a freaking peon, and I just had this feeling of what the hell did I get myself into? It made me feel so little and creepy within. Whatever that stuff is, it is serious. I was writing the story, and I'd hear, it was during the winter, I'd be in my room just sitting there voice texting that chapter, and I just hear zzz, dude, I mean, there's something to that story, and that whole thing is not a hoax. There's something to it.
No,
it's definitely real. There may have been some exaggerations with maybe the movie when Hollywood gets involved, but they definitely experienced something there, and I've experienced it firsthand. So, I know it for sure.
Well, we have a lot of people in chat. The Ghost Sisters, Mike, Treep, Mandy. Okay, so the Ghost Sisters. Do you believe if someone had a traumatic experience as a child, that a darker thing can attach to someone even if they believe in God?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard lots of cases where people have had near-death experiences, and all of a sudden they got introduced to some hooded thing, and then from there, it kind of followed them around, and somehow it was connected to this dark entity and had experiences with it. I don't know why that is. I don't know if somehow, because you had a near-death experience, it was able to target you and allow itself to come with you, and now you're open spiritually. Again, there's so many different scenarios that take place with people. It's never just one answer. There's so many different things that can happen. But traumatic experiences, of course, 100% can open you up to spiritual experiences and open you to the blue pill or the red pill moment from the Matrix when, there's no turning back and it's just there. I mean, I experience something paranormal, every day, because now I have medium abilities that have progressed and are still progressing. And, it's just a part of my life. It's as apparent as inhaling and exhaling oxygen at this point. So, But yes, traumatic experiences, I 100% can unlock some sort of connectivity to a specific entity or even a dark entity. And then we would have to sit there and kind of get down to the gritty of the history of that person and why or how this thing may have tried to latch itself on. I do believe, even though I am Catholic, I believe in past lives. I believe that there could be some sort of spiritual lineage, so to speak, that goes beyond this life, where, something may have had permission in another life, or you invited in another life, or it might be trying to reach in this life to get you. I don't know. I think the possibilities are limitless with how these things can come at you and stay the course and try to latch onto you. So
yeah, you're right. I definitely agree with that. What if, sorry, I can't see. What if they were abused? Do you think the darker things will attach? Well,
oh yeah, 100%. I mean, there's your telltale. I mean, the abuse is literally probably one of their most favorite things that they can do, is because the amplification of our emotions, if they can use some sort of shadowy things from your past as a catalyst to oppressing you, then they're going to use that 100%. And I always say that all the time. And people who have a history of abuse or drug abuse that were in really bottomless pit moments in their life to go and involve themselves in the paranormal. If you're walking into an abandoned asylum with 10 people, I mean, you are the wounded fish out of the school of fish, and the shark is going to come right to you because you're flapping in the water, giving that frequency of energy, saying, hey, look, I'm a good victim and I can be victimized very easily because of my past. And they can look into your past with that, so they know who to target.
It's the weakest link.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to get this question in really quick, because I've been looking it up and I find it so interesting. What do you think, as a demonologist, schizophrenia and possibly oppression or possession, the link there? Because a lot of beliefs that there's something going on with the two because they're so close, and multi-personalities.
Hard to. How do you detach that?
I mean, depending on the individual cases, I haven't personally encountered this stuff. I'd have my own opinions that there is got to be some of these people that are experiencing schizophrenia that has some sort of paranormal element involved with them. It's definitely interesting to think about. And I would love to, see this firsthand and speak to these people to see if something I would pick up intuitively speaking, or to see if there would be weird things that happen, or if there's some sort of knowledge that they have that they shouldn't have. I mean, there'd be something that would bring, kind of some sort of inkling of a paranormal supernatural experience going on, I would think. Just like if someone was possessed, I mean, that's what we do. I mean, that you want to eliminate every rational explanation before you would assume there's something supernaturally taking place. But that would be a fascinating thing, just to go through a hospital of people who have schizophrenia and sit there and just study these people from a researching perspective. I mean, I've thought about this too plenty of times.
It's actually really sad, because you never know how many of those people that were diagnosed really maybe were.
And it's you Google it, and it's a commonality. It's hard, if you're a believer, it's hard to decipher the two. It could be both mixed in, or it could be a possible possession that comes and goes through that person, and they act as if, it's very interesting. But as this is a great show, by the way. But I do want to talk about something that I highly recommend the viewers to watch, and it's 28 Days Haunted, because quite frankly, I loved it. And I'll tell you why I loved it. As you know, Julie and I live in a haunted location, and I always said that paranormal investigation, 4 to 6 hours doesn't do any justice. But when you stay at a location for 28 days, that to me is solidarity. That to me is the truth. And I watched that show with my eyes glued to the TV on all the different teams, and it all rings true to what you guys are experiencing. So, Sean, take the floor on that.
I mean, yeah. Obviously, it came from the Warrens, and to bring it back to Amityville, I'm sure that the 28 days thing, the theory, the cycle came from the Lutz family, because they ran out of the house after 28 days and left all the furniture and all their belongings behind. What we did there, and I think when Ed Warren was thinking about that, it was kind of like just living in the property and seeing what happens and seeing how things can unfold. But we were engaging, communicating, with spirits 24/7. Now, the show shows only a fraction of the stuff that we went through. I mean, we were there for that amount of time. It's a very consolidated, version of events. And, yeah, I mean, by the third week, I was slurring my words. I mean, I don't even think I could investigate anymore because it didn't matter if I had 8 hours of sleep. It's just like this gnawing feeling. I felt like I was more of an earthbound soul on the property that was trapped there than I was a human being because I had no contact to the outside world. I mean, all I knew was that place. I compared it to being like a prisoner, and all is, the yard, the cafeteria, and your cell. I mean, I know every portion of that property. Now, I had the most beautiful emotional paranormal experience I've ever had while I was there. Unfortunately, it didn't make the show, but I made a whole video about it, and I would love anyone who's seen the show, watch the video on my YouTube. Just type in Mercy 28 Days Haunted, is because Mercy Adelaide connected to me on such a profound level while I was there. Because when I had to get up and leave, and it happened to me last minute, I just had to drop my stuff and just disappear and go off the grid. I brought my guitar with me because I'm thinking I don't have any outlets, TV or phone or anything like that. And I just sit there on my downtime, play my guitar and come up with some songs. And I usually hum melodies to it. And I connected to her spirit. And I ended up coming up with a song that was very haunting. I had a vision about her writing notes to her love, very poetically. And I said to everyone, he's like, when I go home, I think I'm going to finish this song. And I would hum around the house and I'd say, I'm going to dedicate this song because I feel like I'm a part of this, living it every day. And she knew about the song. One night I connected to her and, I could hear in my head, I emotionally connected this whole thing that happens. If you watch the video, I started to hear the acoustic chords in my head of the song I planned to write for her. In that moment, I literally started crying. I couldn't even stop. I had to run out of the house and get air, and all this thing happened to me. But when I went back in the recording right after this took place, you hear her humming the melody that I came up with.
Wow.
And right before you hear me explain that, I can hear the chords playing in my head, and it just blew me away. And I ran to my guitar and I took the EVP and put it over the acoustic guitar while we were on the set. And she's humming the melody in perfect key to my guitar. It wasn't even perfectly in key. It's insane. And that was really why it inspired me to take, flowers from the property and put it at the grave, because I literally was just the thought or talking about this. I literally felt her decades of heartache, and we connected on such a high level, surreal level. And that's why I was, the part you don't see even me standing in front of the grave is that I'm going to go home and I'm going to write that song. I'm going to finish it. And I did. I went to Nashville, recorded the song. I called it Mercy, dedicated after her. And her humming is part of the song. It's like a swishing noise in the background. And I incorporated the words that I psychically felt that she wrote to her love and melded with my own words. And this whole thing happened. Definitely watch the video on YouTube because I think it's really important. It'll be part of my lectures for the rest of my life because, just like she said to me after this happened, you were meant to come here. You capture my essence. And I have some sort of connection to this whole story that you can hear more about in that 20-minute video. And there's also a music video that I did to the song in the ocean, which was even weirder. And I found out there I was to go with my filmmaker buddy to find out while I was down there that allegedly Captain Grant had shipwrecked 3 hours out to sea from where I was. But it's so weird.
Wow.
No cell phone for 28 days?
What was it? No cell phone.
Cell phone. He's stuck on the no cell phone.
Well,
No cell
I'm thinking
phone.
about no cell phone.
I had
television.
No television.
That right there, you go insane right there.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that's great because you get the most paranormal experiences when you take out all the electronics that would affect you and your thought process. And I've seen some of these guys on the show getting oppressed and getting violent and agitated.
Yeah, and I dealt with some of that on our location. I know the guy accused me of writing on the mirror, which is like really ridiculous. And they started to fight with each other too. I mean, again, there's a lot more that you didn't see on the show. But again, I tried to like explain this to everybody. I'm like, I've investigated places for many days in a row. I've been at haunted locations 7 days in a row that are really messed up. I just never been for that long and not having it isolated from the public or anything like that. So, I mean, let alone the experience I have with like oppressive energies. And there were things in there that were trying to manipulate us and cause us to be enemies of each other. But then you also have, the thought that we're on TV and these guys never been on TV, big TV before. So then like, people see, it's like an opportunity. Everyone wants to stand out. And it was like, then you have spirits trying to antagonize that. And it creates scenes and scenarios where it's just like, I'm just trying to get through this thing. And
So you can actually see everybody unraveling. And it was real. Like, it's TV, but you could see it and feel it. It was wild.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you. I mean, when I left that property, the first thing I did is like I had to meet up with friends and just be in a social public environment, because I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'll never forget, I went out to the restaurant and like we sat down. I needed a beer so bad. And I just, the light started flickering above the table, like really crazy. And all of a sudden I hear someone yell out, Sean, and my buddy next to me heard it too.
Oh,
and
wow.
then all of a sudden, like my right ear just started ringing like crazy. I'm like, oh my God. It took me like a week or two to feel back to normal, because all I was doing. I was living, breathing, investigating the paranormal. And because of my sensitivity to the spirits, I mean, I was waking up every night, raising my hand. Something just stood at my bed and said something. Something whispered in my ear. I saw this. There's so much more that was happening. I mean, like I was constantly, being visited. It's just endless. But I'm so thankful for the experience because of what happened to me with that female spirit, because it's truly something emotionally beautiful and surreal and unique that I've never even heard of happening to somebody. So I take that as an opportunity to really connect with a spirit on such a special individual level, being at a location that long. And what had happened to me is proof of that.
Hey, here's a question for you or any other teammate that you know of. When you slept at these locations, how were your dreams? Did any of these spirits come through in a dream state?
Of course. Yeah, 100%. I'd have visions. I saw this guy with an eye patch and a hat. At one point, the other two guys, they were messing around with the Ouija board. I'm just like, guys, don't mess with this stuff. Like, we got to stay here, man. It's like, I'm not taking part in that. And then I'd sit there and I'd hear some creepy voice like in my ear, Ouija, like it was antagonizing me, because what do? I help people that do that, mess around with that stuff. I have to go clean up that mess. And who's going to be the target? You know what I mean? And it's like, there could be matters being worse in the house or on the property because of what's going on. So I mean, and I don't judge anyone who has different methods than me, but of course I advise against certain things because I believe them to be dangerous. I don't judge, whatever it is, but like when I got to be stuck in a house for a long period of time and like, I'm going to be target number one, because I know that they're asking, well, why isn't bad things happening to us? Because I'm like, they're using you as a tool to come at me because they hate my ass.
Yeah, that's true.
That is true. That is true. They will pick the one person to use to trigger everybody else. I mean, we see this all the time.
And then they make you fight. They make the teammates fight. I've seen that over and over. That's a common theme of what they do. And then who's to say, look, there's no boundaries. They go home with you. There could be an attachment. You don't know what these things are. They're drawn to certain energies, and it's fascinating. But and to the listener, you need to watch it. 28 Days. Where's it on right now? Is it on
Netflix?
Netflix. 28 Days Haunted is definitely. If you do not believe in paranormal, you need to watch it. It's true. It's authentic. And it's realism, and I love it. And I think there should be more episodes like that.
It's based off the methods, of Lorraine Warren. So
it's hard to do, by the way, Sean. That's not easy to do that.
No, it wasn't. I'm telling you. I mean, dude, 7 days a week, there's no escape. Like even if you had a full night of sleep, like investigating the paranormal that many days in a row, it's like literally, I felt like I was in a daze. By the third weekish, like I literally was like. Like I couldn't even get words out of my mouth. It was getting so bad. I just couldn't even like do it anymore. It was just crazy. I've never felt like that. I mean, it was just, yeah.
It takes a really, really strong people to get through with that.
And especially being sensitive on top of it, because I mean, I'm like tapped in and living in that environment, and there's all sorts of stuff coming to me constantly. So, but again, I take away that I had a very special experience that I'll never forget. And that's why I feel like, like being there in a long period of time, you can have the opportunity to have such a profound experience that could, stick with you and change you or do some sort of good thing. And there's a positive element with that.
One of the questions I like to ask is that So we know these locations are haunted, and we know that you guys have been affected. Now, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you guys leave the location but have surveillance cameras hooked up to watch the location from somewhere far away. Is there any evidence caught like that where no one's around because there's so much energy in that room?
You think if we leave and then left cameras on after we were there for a certain amount of time, it's possible. Yeah. I mean, I think we all know that, like, you know, when you're by yourself, it's that these things love to come at you too. So, I mean, we actually, I'm filming a documentary this weekend. It's a very unique story. I can't give anything like away. I mean, I'm doing this independently with the Scare Network thing. But this case that came into my lap, I mean, it's a whole neighborhood that's having paranormal activity. And we have multiple houses that we have to investigate, and it's tied to the history of the land, and it's pretty crazy. And you know, that's something that I've never encountered, where it's literally rampant all over the neighborhood.
I say that over here, and I know people can disagree with me, but I feel very strongly that it's not just our house.
Yeah, the neighborhood, like the movie Poltergeist.
It's literally what. Yeah.
When you first get on the bus, you get that tightness and that heaviness and that I don't know.
Well, that's like Gettysburg, Joel. You know, Gettysburg is like that. You know, that whole area is active, and you know,
the whole place is haunted everywhere.
Yeah. Fascinating.
I love Gettysburg.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. We were at the orphanage years ago, and we had our own experiences there. It's really wild. Hey, tell people all the good stuff, like where they can find you, your books, and what you have going on now, and all that good stuff.
Most of my handles here are Sean D. Austin, like it says right there. My Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm filming more documentaries for ScareNetwork.tv. Definitely go check it out. There's an app on Roku, Fire Stick, and Apple iOS. You can watch the Amityville documentary on there. If you're interested in a book, you can go to SeanDAustin.com. I mail out signed books anywhere in the U.S. Otherwise, you can get my books off Amazon if you're outside the country. And I just posted today. I'm really excited. I came up with a unique concept that it's never really been done before. I'm going to be working on an actual movie having to do with the demonic. And I'm really excited to see where this goes and how this progresses. Writing a script and got some good help. And once we're happy with the script, I think we're going to start filming it in the coming months. So that's territory I've never been a part of. And I'd love to. I'm making a list of all my true demonic encounters that I've had to incorporate real experiences into the movie. So we shall see how that comes to light as well.
You're doing a great job. Keep it up. And, you know, I always believe knowledge is power. And as a person like yourself, you're out there, you're doing the due diligence. And I hope that one day there's a connection between science and paranormal where they can understand what's going on, that these are not hallucinations or fabrications or things that are psychosomatic. These activities within the other side do exist. And it's people like yourself and those that bring their stories forward from documentation that, you know, can prove the existence of another side. With that said, this has been an awesome show, right, Joel?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in chat, too.
Thank you, Sean. We really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Of course. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, too. Thank you so much. Special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show. We love them. And don't forget to watch us on Roku live. So we are live every week. And join us next week on 107.7 FM and 105.3 FM from New Orleans.
And to the listener, please share this show. There's a lot of knowledge in this show tonight. And we really get down to a lot of substance, hardcore. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a safe, great night. Thank you, Sean Austin, once again. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you.